Topic 4, we're looking at function values of any acute angle, and we're going to talk about some calculator tips real quick first. Okay. Now, if you're going to evaluate trig functions on your calculator or on Desmos, we need to make sure you know what mode you're in. So if I click on the mode button, my calculator right now is in radian mode. There are two types of angles actually, degrees and radians. We're going to be working with both in the course, but we start with degrees because they're more of a common language that we've already got. So we're going to use degrees to begin with. So I'm going to switch my mode into degrees, and then I can quit out of the mode button. Now that I'm in degrees, I can evaluate some of the trigonometric ratios that I found on this page and just verify them. So I can do the sine of, say, 30 degrees, for example, and I get a half, which I found out by myself here. I can do the cosine of 30 degrees as well, and I get the decimal for the square root of 3 over 2. So I can confirm this is the square root of 3 divided by 2. So all of these can be entered. I can't enter cosecant. However, if I want to enter cosecant, I can do 1 divided by the sine of 30 degrees since it's a reciprocal function. So it should come out as 2. Fantastic, and it does. Okay, so I can confirm these. I don't want the decimals for these ratios because we can get them exactly, so you want the exact values for those ratios, but they're nice to be able to confirm and check right there. I'm going to flip over to a Desmos screen to talk about how to change the mode here as well. So in the graph settings, there's a degrees and radians button here at the bottom. Note that in regular web Desmos, radians is the default, but I can click to change it to degrees. In Desmos test mode, degrees is actually default. So you're always going to want to check to make sure you know whether you're in degrees or radians using that wrench right here. So again, I already checked some like the sine of 30. Let me do the sine of 45. I'm just typing SIN for sine, and I can do 45, and I get that decimal. I know that by hand, the sine of 45 was supposed to be the square root of 2 divided by 2, and I can confirm that yes, that is the same decimal. If you don't feel comfortable typing your trig functions like sine or cosine, COS, notice when I hit the S, it changes font, and so it recognizes the function. I can do cosine of 45 is that same ratio. Instead, I can use the toolbar, go into functions, go into right here actually, trig is highlighted, and I notice that I have, this is fantastic, but I have not just the first 3 which are available on the calculator, I also have the co-functions. Keep in mind that the middle functions are the inverse functions. They are not the co-functions. We will deal with those later. And that last row is hyperbolic functions. We generally do not talk about hyperbolic functions until the calculus sequence, so we probably will not be dealing with sinh, cosh, and tanh in pre-calc. We're going to focus on the first 2 columns right here. These are not available on the calculator, only here on Desmos, so we might make a little more use of these than we had before. So let's check a few of them, like for example, let's check secant of 30 degrees. We have this decimal, and when we computed it by hand, we got 2 times the square root of 3 divided by 3, and yes, those are the same in decimal value. Great. Okay, so just want to keep that in mind. We can get some of these. The common ratios, 30 degrees, 45 degrees, 60 degrees, we want to have exactly. There will be many angles, though, that we can't get exactly, in which case we're going to need to use the calculator or Desmos to evaluate them and approximate them. All right, so let's look back over at our notes. Our calculator is again getting obsolete as we get into Desmos, which can do more things than it can do. Sad little calculator. Now, back in the old days, there were entire tables of trigonometric values because even calculators weren't around, and even now those calculators are getting obsolete as we get into more and more computational power on the web. Now, not all angles are measured in decimal form. Sometimes angles are measured in DMS form or degrees, minutes, and seconds form. This is used, navigation is one of the big ones, or astronomy. So they don't use decimal degrees. They don't use something like 20.14 degrees. They say something like 52 degrees and 15 minutes. So the 1 tick is for minutes and the 2 tick is for seconds. So we have minutes and seconds. Now, to convert minutes into seconds, I can just divide by 60. So if I want to convert this, I'll just use my calculator because it's convenient. I can do 52 degrees plus 15 divided by 60, converting those minutes into degrees. So as a decimal degree, that's going to be 52.25 degrees. So in decimal degrees, this one is 52.25 degrees. Now I can also convert them using the angle button on a calculator. So if I go into angle, which is second, then the apps key, I can see the convert to decimal degree or DMS, and I can see the minutes and seconds, which are over by memory down here at the bottom. So let's first of all type in 52 angle degrees, 15 angle minutes, and it's going to convert now into decimal degrees by default. So I can type in something like that and come out with the decimal degree notation. So this is the decimal degree notation instead of the DMS notation. It was in DMS to begin with. Degrees, minutes, seconds is what DMS stands for. And now I convert it into decimal format. I can do the same thing over here by typing 76 degrees, 11 minutes, 34. I'm going to hit second plus to get, I'm sorry, it's actually alpha plus to get to the double tick for seconds. Or I could have done 76 plus parentheses 11 plus 34 divided by 60, close parentheses, divided by 60 to convert that by dividing the seconds into minutes and the minutes into seconds by dividing by 60 and dividing by 60 again. So the same way, it's just a matter of how I want to input the information. So this is the same thing as 76.19278 degrees if I keep a few places there. Now to go back, well, 20.14 degrees, I could take just the decimal place and multiply it by 60, then take any remainder and multiply that by 60 again to convert it. So this would be 20 degrees, 8 minutes, 24 seconds if I'm converting it by hand. Or I can type in 20.14 and then go into the angles menu and go option 4, convert that into DMS, and it converts it back into the degrees, minutes, seconds notation for me. I've got those two options available. This is something that I don't know how to do on decimals. It might allow, but for the most part, most people use decimal degrees. Actually, most people don't use degrees at all. They use radians, so it's not really built to convert into those unusual forms. But navigation, so whether you're like a pilot or anything in astronomy or any navigational charts, will have that DMS notation on them. So it's just nice to be able to be familiar to convert those into what we're more familiar with, which is decimal degrees. So I'll convert this next one, 2.53 degrees, oops, wrong button, angle, into DMS. And so this one converts as 0 degrees, 15 minutes, and 10.8 seconds. And again, if I did that by hand, I'd do 0.253 times 60, that's my 15 degrees, then 0.18 times 60 again, that's my 10.8 seconds. There's no smaller unit to go beyond seconds that I can do the 0.8 times something again. There's nothing, not a smaller unit that we use. All right. Important, whenever we use the calculator for trigonometric functions and calculations, it always gives a decimal answer, and these are nearly always approximations of exact answers. We are going to want those exact answers whenever possible. It's not always possible, however, so we're going to do some decimals here to approximate. Find the trig function value rounding to 4 places. So first the cotangent of 17 degrees, then the tangent of 63 degrees, 48 minutes. Okay, now I'm going to want to get familiar with my calculator and decimals because sometimes one works better than the other. Cotangent. I do not have a cotangent button, and it is not tan to the -1. That is arctangent. So if I want to do cotangent on a calculator, I would need to type in 1 divided by tangent of 17 degrees. Okay, so I can do 1 divided by tangent of 17 and get the decimal equivalent. The decimal equivalent for cotangent of 17 is 3.2709. We'll keep 4 places unless we're told otherwise. Now, I can, in Desmos, just type that in. The cotangent of 17. Oh, did I forget? I opened a new blank graph. I forgot to turn it into degrees. The answer was different for a second because it was in radians. But now that I'm in degrees, same answer, 3.2709. And I can just type cotangent there. Okay, now we're going to try in DMS. Okay, so our tangent. I can, without converting this, type in the tangent of 63 degrees, 48 angle menu minutes, and it's going to compute it in DMS notation. I get the tangent here as 2.03227. Or if I was to do this in Desmos, I don't think a DMS notation is going to work, but I'm going to find out. So tangent of 63. I don't even know how to type a degree symbol here. So degrees? No, it's an O. That's probably why it's not going to work. If anyone can figure out a way to make it work, let me know. Other than that, I'm going to have to convert. So it's 63 degrees plus 48 minutes. So 48 out of 60. I can convert it into decimal degrees and then do its tangent, and then I have it matching back up. But I can't type it in DMS notation as it looked to begin with. I have to convert it myself first. Oh well. So sometimes it's nice to use the Desmos because I can type in cotangent, for example, where I can't do that in my calculator. Sometimes it might be nice to use my calculator because I can't type something in DMS if I have something that's presented that way. But DMS is less and less common. It's, again, only in those usually navigational or topographical settings.